Vision Australia.
Blindness,
low vision,
Opportunity.
So Karen, one thing that we wanted to talk to you a little bit about was your idea of realistic feedback. And sometimes as a person with vision loss, sometimes people can give you feedback that can seem sort of harsh, or you don't necessarily know what's going on, so you don't know when to ask for feedback. But why is it so important that you get realistic feedback?
Well, I think that for someone with a vision impairment, that the problem really boils down to the fact that the feedback that you get frequently from people around you, sighted people, is that they don't know what to expect of someone who's blind, and so they give you very skewed information based on what they think you can do or can't do, and what they think they could do or couldn't do without sight. Society works against you in a sense because people are trained up to be nice to other people at the expense sometimes of honesty. And I think for blind kids in particular and young people, you're asking for information about how your performance was, and people have this kind of warped perspective on what you ought to be doing. And so what happens is they say, oh, you've done a great job, or they'll say to you, you were brilliant, you were great, you did a wonderful job. They don't give you any details, but they just say it's wonderful, it's great, I love what you've done, it's perfect. And so you start thinking, well, I'm doing so well. And they don't tell you what you really need to know, which is, how does your performance compare to other kids your age and their performance? And the next level, how you could improve to be more like the other kids in terms of your performance. So they're expecting you to do less, to take longer, to be less able, frankly. And so that's what they give you, is their perception based on less able, which is fine if that's what you want, but that's not what I want for you. What I want for you is to be the very best that you can be. And that requires you to not only think about how you're performing in the moment, but how you will perform in the future, what you need to do differently, how to make things better so that your performance continues to improve over time. That's why you need realistic feedback, so that you can evaluate where you are in the present, where you want to be, and how to get there.
So do you have any suggestions for the people that are listening as far as how to get that realistic feedback?
You have to listen closely to what people are saying to you and think about, are they right? Have I done the very best that I can do? And you need to say to them, I need to know how well you did. I need to know how many laps you swam. And then I can think about, how does that compare to what I did? I need to ask my teachers, my parents, how long did it take the other kids? What happens with kids in special education is everybody says, oh, not to worry. Not to worry. You didn't do it as quickly. You didn't do as much, but it's okay because you're blind. And so I don't expect you to do okay. That's not what you want. It feels at the moment, well, I got off the hook. It was so much easier. I got extra time. I didn't have to do 45 problems. I only had to do 5. But you're ruining things for yourself if you don't insist that you get a comparison between what you are doing and what the norm is. Then you are forever going to be behind. You're going to be forever trying to play catch up. And when you leave school and try to go to work, employers are never going to pay you based on what you think you ought to do. They're going to pay you based on what they think you ought to do. And what they think you ought to do is the same work in the same amount of time as all the other workers. And if you can't meet that standard, you won't have a job.
What would you suggest to young people when they are hearing feedback that maybe isn't so great or positive, or it's a bit of a shock to the system if they've always had that feedback that maybe isn't as accurate or as honest as it could be?
Yeah, I think that what kids and young people have to think about is, what is really happening here? Is this person really trying to hurt me? Is this person trying to be mean? Or is this person trying to be honest with me about what I could do differently? I think you have to listen carefully and think about, do I get from this person the details about how to improve my performance? So if you get feedback from a service provider or your parents and you think, oh, they're just being mean, the question to ask is, what do you think I need to do differently? What do you think I need to do differently to meet your expectation? What I tell kids who work with me and young adults is, think about life. Think about being an actor on the stage of life. You're the actor, and there's always going to be either an audience or a director. And in this instance, Natalie, I think you're talking about, quote unquote, the director. If it's your teacher, if it's a service provider, if it's your parent, that person at that moment in time is being the director. And ideally, the director tells you as an actor, what do I need to do to improve this performance? What's going to make it work better for me? When you think about feedback as a critique, then I think it makes more sense. If you think it's criticism, this person's being wicked unkind, this person's being mean to me, then you stop listening. You always have to ask yourself, am I okay with this person having this impression of me? Because if I'm comfortable with it, if I think, oh, she's just having a bad hair day, then I can ignore that piece of feedback. But if I think to myself, wait a minute, she's not understanding what I'm trying to say or trying to do or trying to demonstrate in terms of competence, maybe I need to do something a little differently. I have a responsibility. If I want to grow as a person, if I want to be better, I have to constantly think, how do I get better? Only way you can ever get better, improve, really improve your performance, is to listen to all that hard critique that comes from people who care about you, that I'm calling realistic feedback, and think about it. You don't have to take every piece of advice. What you need to do is listen, think about it, and make a decision. Would this make me a better person? And if it would, then you decide, I'm going to take that piece of advice and do something with it. If you think, oh, she's nuts, she doesn't know what she's talking about, she doesn't get, then you can ignore it. You can just let go of it. Smile, say thank you very much, and move on. Other people see us differently than we see ourselves. And those differences may be important. It's not about believing wholeheartedly this realistic feedback thing. It's not about believing everything that everyone tells you. It's about gathering the information and then analyzing that information, thinking about it, and thinking, how can I be better? How can I be better? How can I perform better? How can I do better with this kind of information?
I think for some kids, the other kids around them don't have to ask for that same amount of information, or it feels kind of awkward because it is different when you are blind or have low vision, right? You may have to be asking questions that your friends aren't asking just because you have to assert yourself to do that, right?
Right. It does sometimes feel, that you're being singled out in a sense. And there's a multitude of reasons. I mean, those sighted kids aren't gathering information in the same way. They're gathering information about how they're performing based on this whole incidental learning thing that's going on, where I look over and if you're nodding, then I think, oh yeah, she gets it, she gets it. If you smile at me, then I think, oh yeah, you understood what I was saying. If I perform well, or I think I've performed well, and you give me the 2 thumbs up, then I know I did really, really well. But that's all non-verbalized. It's all incidental. It's happening out there very casually. If you're in a band, all the other kids are getting constant input. They don't realize it. I mean, they're getting badgered more than you are in a sense, because they're getting constant input about how they're doing. I mean, sometimes it'll be as simple as in band, or if you're playing in the orchestra, the director will pull back his shoulders or her shoulders, look directly at you, and you know you have to sit up straighter. It's just that subtle. Whereas if you can't see, I need to say to you afterwards, oh, Laura, I was a little disappointed because you weren't really sitting up straight when you were playing your violin, and it meant that other people looked at you and thought you looked like you were relaxing or laid back or not interested, and I know that's not the case. I have to give you feedback as a sighted professional or a parent, because if you can't see that, then you don't know that's what's going on. It is different. It is different if you have no vision or if you have limited vision. You have to ask for feedback. And I think the hard part for blind and low vision kids is that many times, frankly, they think, well, no news is good news. If I just sit still and nobody gives me any grief, then I'm okay. But they aren't okay because they're not getting the amount of feedback that they really need. Ask the question, what do you think? What did you like about my performance? What didn't you like about my performance? Did I do this quickly enough? Is this comparable to what the other kids were doing? Is my work like her work? I need to ask you, and if you don't tell me, then I don't know. If you go after it and you ask the question enough times, people are going to figure out that you really do want to know, especially service providers, parents, adults in your lives. They're going to learn from you that they need to give you verbal feedback.
Vision Australia.
Blindness,
Low vision.
Opportunity.